Okay, welcome to another veranda chat that we're having with leadership coach for senior executives, Alvin Day. As you may know by now, Mr. Day has consented to share with the HRD graduate programs unit here at the University of the West Indies his wisdom gleaned over decades of working with organizations globally. And so today we want to talk about change management. Again, I was reading an article in which Michael Coffey quoted a Harvard Business School study that showed that while most employers don't think that their employees are ready for the future of work, they feel that this is because employees fear change. The opposite is true. Workers were found to be more than twice as likely to hold themselves responsible for preparing for the future of work compared to just 19% of employers. So my question is, how can HR, as the organization's representative, add value to the change management initiative in the organization?
Okay. Critical subject, because whether we like it or not, or know it or not, we live in a world of change and everybody's talking about it. But what do we do about it is this question as an HR organization. So I won't spend time talking about change. There's enough literature and conversation about that. Let's talk about what you've asked here about change management. Change management is one of the courses that we offer to our senior executives, even though it is taught in schools. Because what we do in our business is we clean up what they didn't learn in school, whether it was there and they didn't learn it or it was not on the curriculum. And sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where the people leading the companies went to school 20 and 30 years ago, and some things that they have to be managing today did not exist when they were being taught. And so one of these is change management. The sorts of change that we face today demand that we focus intensively on the process by which we make the change happen and stick. In that course, we have many steps and processes and background information and research, pieces of research and so forth. But I have a pivotal question right in the center of that course that says, what is the difference between change management and project management? And after much conversation, the answer is an inordinate preoccupation with stakeholder value. So we have to define the problem. We have to look at our resources. We have to come up with ideas. We have to do feasibility studies. We have to operationalize. We have to develop our strategies. We have to do our transition planning. We have to do all the things and the implementation that we know we do in project management. But the thing that gets heightened attention, or ought to get heightened attention, is this mindset of being closely connected with the value that is given to the stakeholders and their psychology. Because if we don't, the change either doesn't work or does not stick. Now, let's come back to the question of HR. What can HR do? HR has to be a master at this. HR has to be a master at A, identifying for any change situation who the stakeholders are. And B, what are they thinking? What are the needs? What are the desires? What are the pains and sufferings? What are the things that are not working and should be working? HR has to be a master at pushing the right buttons to ensure that the stakeholders see vested interest in it for them. This is a mechanism that is sometimes missing for novices in business who are really skilled at their technical competencies. We know how to do the operation. We know how to do the sales. We know how to do the manufacturing. But in order for us to do our technical competency right when there is a change, we have to recognize that there are people who benefit from the status quo.
Yes, yes.
Okay? There are people who just want it to be fine. I remember a manufacturing company asking me to come talk with them about a process called category management. And it has to do with consumer products and delivering consumer value and so forth. And they had put a committee together to change the system that was there. And as I sat there and talked with them, it became evident to me after a while that if we changed the system to category management, they would make less money. The people on the team would make less money because it would change some ways in which they're compensated. And I knew it was dead. because they were stakeholders and they were asked to do something that would not benefit them, in fact, would hurt them. It never got off the ground, just as I anticipated. So the point of the matter is, yeah, we can get preoccupied with the other 11 steps of change management. Yeah, we do those in good project management. The essence of it, the kernel of it, the core of it is, what is the current status? What is the desired status? Who benefits from the current status? Who wants the current status? Who doesn't care about the current status and thinks we're wasting our time? Who are the ones of those who have influence? And by the way, they all do, but we look for the ones with the highest influence. The ones who don't care and think we ought not to allocate resources. The ones who care and think we ought to leave it alone because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the ones who care and say we cannot go into the future like this. And there may be a couple other constituencies, but when we understand the key constituencies, we need to figure out what their emotional needs are, what their feelings are, what their prejudices are, their biases, their desires. And oftentimes it's not a group of them, it's an individual who's the influencer in that group. So you may have a committee of 12 people or 6 people. Yeah, it's hard to take on a whole committee. We ought to know them, but who's the influencer to whom the other 11 in that group listen? And then that person becomes the embodiment of what the group thinks. And we study that person and we cultivate a relationship with that person, and we build alliances with that person and help to understand, first of all, that person. So we're not just selling, we're understanding what the internal customer wants. You know, to take it up to a higher level rather than seeming like we're just going to manipulate the system, we are understanding who our internal customers for this change are and what they desire. And if what they desire is not good for the big picture, figure out how that's not going to be good for them in the long run either, so that they see the value of what we want. Get their input so that they feel ownership in what we want. Yes? Because sometimes we go ahead truculently with change, thinking that it's the right thing because we sit at the top of the organization and we know what we want, or because we're the functionary responsible for changing the organization as HR practitioners. But we don't know that there's more to consider by finding more information out from the stakeholders who influence these groups. So what HR has to do is it has to have representatives in the various departments and functions to understand the business and to see who are the people influencing the business and what they do for a living and what their issues and challenges are, and ensure that their points of view are reflected in a sort of multifaceted, multidisciplinary way into the prospect of making this change, either how we do the change or what the change itself is. Back in the 80s, there was a concept in industry called total systems efficiency. And one of the illustrations of the heart of this concept was it is possible for operations to take a decision that generates an extra $1 for the organization for operations. And they celebrate that. But in generating that $1, it costs IT $2. And the whole system is down by $1. See? So to get the total system efficiency demands that HR is firmly connected into the various aspects of the organization and belongs there and knows the people and is talking to the people, so that when it comes to a particular big change, HR already knows who the people are that they should consult with to give them further information about the change and whether it's good for the organism overall or not, and how we go about that change if it is regarded as the right place to go.
So you seem to be saying then that HR can actually lead the organizational strategy. It's more, or it should be more than just an add-on. I mean, heard you say that before, but can HR actually lead? Can HR be the ones to initiate? So it's not finance, it's not R&D, it's not marketing. Can HR initiate the direction of the company?
The answer is two ways, both ways. One is to respond to and facilitate the change, and the other one is to lead the change. Because of HR's vantage point of understanding human beings and their motivation and their qualifications and their performance, HR is better able to look ahead and see problems before they happen. HR should be able to initiate conversations about changes that are necessary and be able to get the organization to follow. But what's required there, what is required, and I keep going back to this theme, is that HR understand that the intrinsic value of an idea has to correlate with the financial performance of the organization in order to get attention in the private sector, or it has to correlate with the pursuit of the mission of the organization for those that are not just profit driven.
Yes.
The why we exist, the what are we here for, the where we get our accolades and our kudos and our face in the press and our attaboys. If that is what the organization is here to do and that the leaders care about, HR has to be able to render this change that we recommend in the context of how it will further that mission or help to generate sales and profits. Until HR is able to make that connection, HR is going to fail.
Yes, yes. Yeah. All right, so thank you very much. You've affirmed HR, and I'm hoping that the people who watch this video will be inspired, you know. Yes, all right. Thank you so much.
And yes.
Yes.
Oh, and I was just going to add, yes, you're most welcome. And I realize that we have hardly cracked the nut here because we've just talked about what HR needs to do. The questions that remain now would be, how does HR do this? How does HR convert an idea into measurable, practical results? And my experience is not all HR people are equipped with that, because a part of HR's responsibility is to care, is to put systems and structures in place that care for the people. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, along with that goes a certain softness, and it's hard to put it in words. It predisposes some HR practitioners into being even altruistic, what ought to be, and idealistic and so forth. And the how to get this done requires a harsh mix of the altruism and the care and the empathy, which I think are critical, with the rigorous money-making, deliver the number, bottom line orientation. And so if you have people who are just soft and kind and loving and empathetic, which are wonderful traits for which we need to put more resources, if they're primarily that and idealistic, they're going to be lacking in the language and the understanding of the value of the money, the profit, of the accomplishment of the target. So it's going to require HR people to have a mix of both of these, to understand the economic value of an idea and to understand dollars and cents, and to be in the finance meeting when they're talking about finance, and in the strategy meeting when they're talking about getting the mission done and so forth, so that it can come from a place of true understanding to say, okay, this is not just for being nice. This is the company is going to go out of business, or we're going to lose 10 share points if we don't do this. Let me tell you what the research indicates, so that they can show in a very logical, compelling fashion to the people who have the money that it is in their best interest, the stakeholders, to make the change necessary. And so the skill required to do that sometimes goes beyond the sort of caring, empathetic nature of some HR practitioners.
But I like the point that you just made, that they need to be able to quote numbers. They need facts, not just feelings, so that, yeah. So we've had fantastic brought up on this video. Thank you so much. All right,
You're welcome.
So we will talk again next month.